Welcome to the Get CyBUr Smart Podcast, your 7 to 10 minute educational look into this crazy thing we call cyber. I'm your host, retired FBI cyber special agent Darren Mott. In this episode, we are going to talk about the dark web. What is it? Where is it? Is it something I should go to? And is it really all that bad? So as I go into this particular episode 11 of the the Get CyBUr Smart Podcast, I want to thank you again for downloading and listening and passing the word on the podcast. I very much appreciate it. A couple things new for this podcast. There is a video element now. So if you go to the CyBUr Smart channel on YouTube, CyBUr spelled CYBUR, it's not hard to find, I'm sure, you will find episode 11 in video form. So I have just started doing this because people want to see some of the stuff I talk about, and I can give better illustrations to the things I'm discussing. And so by having a YouTube channel, I can kind of show that. Now, do you have to go to the YouTube channel to get anything out of this podcast? No. I will provide you plenty of information that will make you a little cyber smarter so you get a whole lot cyber safer. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about the dark web. You've probably all heard or seen news articles regarding the dark web and all the bad things that go on there, the illicit drugs that are sold, guns sold, and certainly there is a lot of bad stuff that happens on the dark web. The dark web is a piece of what we call the deep web, and the internet as a whole has two general areas, the surface web and the deep web. You probably think you've never been to the deep web, but I can tell you, you certainly have. And I'll show you how and what that is throughout this podcast. And if you want to see the video aspect of it, you can go check it out on the YouTube channel. And any feedback on the videos, on the podcasts themselves, feel free to send those to me. I am doing this all on my own in a little room in my house with some free software. So I recognize that some of the video elements are not as professional as you generally like them to be, but we're here for information, not to look at this ugly mug. So let's get into the information on what is the dark web. Again, this is going to be very short, very general. It's not going to give you like everything you necessarily want out of what the dark web is. You're not going to be a dark web expert when it's all said and done, but you'll have an understanding of what it is and why it exists and where you can go to it, how you can access it. It's easy for anyone to get to now. It used to be more difficult, but it's very easy now based on some new technology that makes it easy to do so. So let's talk about first the three areas of the internet. Two of you've been to. Everybody here listening has been to two of these areas. The dark web, chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you have not been to dark web because, again, like I said, it's not that easy to get to. At least it didn't in the past. It's a little easier now. So the first one is the main one we all know, the surface web. If you type in google.com or you type in apple.com or you go to your favorite news site, cnn.com, foxnews.com, whatever, you type in the URL, it takes you there, you get the data, you get the information. If it's something you can search for in a web browser, that's the surface web. Very simple, very easy. That's what we're all used to. Now, the deep web is a little different, and sometimes the deep web and the dark web are misconstrued as the same thing when indeed they are not. All the deep web are sites that you go to that you have to have a login. So gmail.com, linkedin.com, regions.com, your account logins, all of those things. If you type in those URLs, you'll get to a surface level page that requires a login and password. Once you put in your login and password, and hopefully your multi-factor authentication, it will take you to the deep website, which is basically information that is stored away with usernames and passwords. Very simple, very easy to understand. Let me show you what that looks like exactly here with I have a version to see what that looks like with a browser. So let me go to that real quick. So there we go. So there is my Outlook login page. So I have several email addresses that I use Outlook for. And so when I go here to the Outlook login, that is the surface web page. It's asking I want to sign in. So I go here to sign in. I get to this page. I type in my email I want, and it takes me to which account do you want. It'll ask for login information. It's already asked for login information, so I'm already signed in. So I probably should have shown the login there. But now I'm on my CyBUr Smart Outlook email account inside the deep web. So I'm now in the deep web. It's basically anything behind a login and password is your deep web. Very simple, very easy to understand. So that is the deep web. So let's go back here to our last piece. So now we know what the surface web is. We know what the deep web is. Let's take a look at the last part, which is, of course, our dark web. So this is a small area of the deep web where a lot of illegal activity happens. Not all the activity on the dark web is illegal. There are certain legitimate reasons to use it. There's a lot of anonymizing within the dark web, how you get onto the dark web network piece, how you access websites. You cannot Google search any of these websites in a traditional browser. It will not really bring you back anything because it's all on an encrypted network that is kind of separate from the surface web and the deep web a little bit. This has to do with how the technology is created. Used to be you had to create a special service called using the Onion router, which is an anonymized version of a VPN connection, if you will. And it would give you access to sites only on the dark web. There's a lot of criminal cases where individuals on the dark web have been arrested or their infrastructure taken down. Silk Road and Silk Road 2.0 are two very famous FBI takedowns where dark websites that were selling credit card information and drug info. You could buy illicit drugs on there. You could buy firearms. You could do a lot of bad stuff on Silk Road. There was a guy who made millions on it before he got arrested. But you had to have credentials to get in. You a lot of times have to be confirmed by someone else to give you access. So that's why it's hard to infiltrate some of these groups that use the dark web. Again, there's a lot of anonymizing that goes on with the information on the dark web. But now, if you wanted to go to the dark web, and you could go there to try to find out information about, which of your passwords have been stolen. If you want to, another legitimate use is journalists use the dark web to communicate with sources. It provides protection. There's a lot of groups online that use the dark web to protect women who are in battered wife situations, to help protect them, to get them information. So there are legitimate reasons to use the dark web, but the majority of it still is criminal enterprises using it to anonymize their information, to anonymize their traffic, to anonymize their infrastructure, to allow them to do the illicit things they're doing. But like I said, not perfect. There's been plenty of dark web folks that have been arrested. So if you're thinking of getting into crime and dark web is the way to go, just understand that it's not a foolproof way to avoid the authorities. So let me show you how to get to the dark web. It's really quite easy now if you wanted to go on there and look around. Just by going to the dark web does not really put you at any additional risk unless you provide personal information where you're not supposed to. That's self-induced risk, but from general, if you just wanted to browse the dark web, you could certainly do that. So what you need is what's called the Tor browser. So let me do one thing here on this particular page. So this is my Tor browser. I brought up my Tor browser. I'm actually going to go to the Tor browser site. So let me type that in while we do that. Sorry for the folks listening to this on the podcast because you can't see this. But so if I go to, and you can Google search, in this case, it's DuckDuckGo is the online search engine being used. That's really, DuckDuckGo is nothing more than Bing. But if you go to Tor Project, this is the Tor Project page on the surface web. And you can go here and download this browser, which gives you access to the dark web. So once you download it, you load it in, then you have this browser called the Tor browser. So, and you can search things like if I wanted to, let's see if Google is available on the dark web. So if I do google.com, it will probably take me to google.com. And it does. So I can do regular surface web browsing in this Tor browser, even though I'm connected to the anonymized Tor service that provides me additional identity protection online. So, there's certainly those aspects. You can get to your deep websites, but the dark web lives in this region. So there's what's called the Hidden Wiki, and this is the surface level URL for it, which gives some information on dark websites. So like Bitcoin let me go to a word I can pronounce. Bitcoin Mixer. You go here, it'll give you information on Bitcoin, stuff like that. And you see this long, odd URL. These are specific URLs within the dark web system that allow for the anonymization of that information. Now there's ways to get to what that is, but for general, it's for protection points. This is the Hidden Wiki with the anonymized URL right there. So if you look at this, there's information here. There's financial services. This is where you can buy premium PayPal, eBay, and bank accounts. These are not legitimate areas. These are places where people have stolen stuff. Let's see what else we have here. You can get high quality Euro bill counterfeits. Just click this link. It'll take you there. Commercial services, dark web hackers. If you want to hire a hacker, you can go here. Let's click on that, see what happens. I'm not going to give any information, but I'm just going to kind of go to it. My information is currently being anonymized, so it's not a problem. So here's information on these guys. And so if you want to hire this particular hacker, he wants to do remote control of a phone or someone else. It costs $700. that you pay for it by Bitcoin. And so if I click on that, I'm sure it'll bring me to a thing that I provide them Bitcoin service. So that is what the dark web looks like. It's really, looks like it's not big websites, but there's products, there's register, there's login, there's all that kind of stuff. So that is the difference between the dark web and the deep web. The dark web is kind of where there's more anonymized, somewhat illicit, mostly illicit information can occur. So how does that look from a percentage version? In other words, like how much of the internet is the surface web? How much is the deep web? How much is the dark web? Well, let's take a quick look here and go to my next slide. So this is a picture. And again, if you're on the podcast, you can't see this, but you can just put in surface web, deep web, and you'll get all sorts of images that show it. So this is an image of the surface web, which is, if you think of it as an iceberg, the very top tip of that is the surface web. And then the deep web is everything underneath it. Now they have in this particular image, they have the dark web all the way at the bottom where you have, the Tor network, illegal information, Silk Road. And like I said, there are legitimate individuals that use the dark web for additional anonymization. Now, probably if you're listening to this podcast, watching this video, you're not one of those people. Probably not somewhere you should go to. If you have a friend or someone who is an IT professional, maybe you ask them to go there with you for it. As always, I appreciate feedback. There is my email address, darren@cybersmart.com. I hope you check out the video version of this and give me feedback onto that as well. Thank you so much for your time. There'll be quite a slight hiatus in the podcast. I have to send my podcast equipment back for some servicing. And so I apologize for that, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Check out the YouTube channel. Check out other podcasts. Check out my other podcast, Darren at the Cyber Guy, or Darren, the Cyber Guy podcast, rather. Go ahead and take a look at that. And I hope you have a safe week. Thanks for stopping in, because if you get a little cyber smarter, you get a whole lot cyber safer.